So good evening all, and welcome to those of you who are here this evening, and welcome to all those who are streaming with us. I want to share a few thoughts that I've had during the months that I've been on sabbatical, and I wonder if you might begin by just thinking about your own life for a moment. So if you know what I think is complete craziness, somewhere between astounding and astonishing and a whole bunch of words like that, it is to be a human being who is alive. And what is even crazier than that is the Christmas story, God becoming a human being. This is a double craziness, for there is a tremendous mystery of God and a tremendous mystery of what it means to be a human being. And if there is one thing that I wish I could have and you could have and the whole world could have, it would be an increased knowledge and perception and awakening to how unbelievable it is that you're alive, and how drawing closer to the sacred humanity of Jesus can make you even more alive. So none of us have done anything to be alive. In other words, we didn't do anything to become alive. We didn't do anything to become a human being. So Merry Christmas, you're alive and you're a human being, and you exist on a pinprick of a planet in a cosmos that is itself an utter pinprick compared to the ginormous cosmos that we have no idea how big it is. We are beyond tiny. And you are one of 7.6 billion people who are currently alive on planet Earth. I mean, it's like a blizzard of people. And yet, you and me and all of us are like snowflakes. We're individuals, and we have our own unique personality and personhood. And think for a moment what the odds are of you being alive and listening to me right now. Take a guess in your own brain. Here's what the experts say. The odds of you being alive, a human being as you are here and now, are 1 in 10 to the 2,685,000th power. And what that means, that probability is like if you had 2 million dice or 2 million die, and each one of those dice had a trillion sides. That's 12 zeros. So you have 2 million dice, each one with a trillion sides, and you rolled the dice, and every one of those dice landed on the number 439,505,270,846. That's the odds of you being alive. Now, you and I have something which is beyond description. You have the ineffable essence of existence. You have being. We are beings. And when I was on sabbatical, I became very interested in what was being. I kept asking all of these great spiritual greats who I was speaking with. I would say, what is being? What's the content of being? What is a being? What's a human being? What's a sentient being? And I was visiting a healer in the middle of nowhere in Rajbagh, India. And while I was on the table with the healer, I had a vision. And it was a vision of being. As I received the vision, I understood it to be being as in human beings, as in sentient beings, all flowing from the being of God. And what it looked like was a three-dimensional abstract painting that was alive and moving. And there were innumerable pinprick, pixelated dots suspended in this otherworldly light in something that was transparent like water, though it wasn't water. And all the dots were vibrating and floating and energized, and the top of my view, it was darker because it seemed to me there was more of these vibrating balls clustered toward the top and fewer toward the bottom. And the whole thing was infused with this otherworldly light that doesn't look like any of the lights that we see. And while I was seeing it, I thought, oh, this is the raw material of life. This is being. And as I looked at it, I knew that it defied all words and all human categories. And in a sense, there was nothing to say about it. And just to see the image was one thing, but I had zero understanding of what it was, and I felt immensely relieved. I mean, I felt this weight move from my body and from my mental capacities and spiritually. I felt released and relieved that this being was completely beyond our understanding. There was no human category to sum this thing up. We weren't going to control this thing, and to describe it would be foolish at best and just ridiculous at worst. And then I broke into guffaws of laughter. I laughed for about 15 minutes straight, and I laughed at myself that anybody would think I was an authority about anything in front of this being and the being of God. And I laughed at all these talkers of God and thought, oh my gosh, in front of God, we have no category for this, and we have this being that flows from God. And this is what artificial intelligence, for all of its intelligence, cannot do. It has no being. It has no ineffable life that we don't understand. And not only are we beings, but we're beings with bodies, and we take these bodies for granted. Now, I know some of you have read Bill Bryson's book called The Body, which really helps you not take your body for granted. But we are made up, 61% of you is made up of dirt, stuff found in dirt that is dead in dirt, but inside of you combines to keep you alive. So, you know the story of Adam and Eve? Well, the Bible got it right. Adam means dirt being in Hebrew. And you are made up of 7 billion cells. And the human body can produce, you just produced 25 billion cells. And while I'm talking, you produced 25 million red blood cells are going to zing around your body 150,000 times before they throw themselves out. And if your blood veins were all stretched out, they would go around the earth 2.5 times. And your heart beats 1,000 times a day. And wait to hear this one. Your stomach acid can dissolve razor blades, in case you swallow a razor blade. Now, we breathe. We have the breath of life. We don't think anything about breathing. We are 61% oxygen. We breathe 22,000 times a day. We breathe 2,000 gallons of air. Imagine 2,000 gallons of milk at the grocery store, right? The surface area of one lung is the size of a tennis court. And if you straightened out all of the tissues in there, it would stretch coast to coast. And we have brains. Brains are the new frontier, by the way. I'm sure you know about that. And our brains are 75% water. And they weigh 3 pounds. And they have more electrical impulses in a day than all of the telephones and cell phones of the world added up. And that works while you're asleep. And wait to hear this. We sleep on the average 25 years of our life. Boy, get a good bed, okay? John Blackenbauer invented the first so-called first personal computer, but the first personal computer is right there. And we know almost nothing about it. It is so complex to walk, it's phenomenal that any of us can walk. And yet we walk on an average of 70,000 miles in our life. And we have consciousness. We have this thing that is categorically different than artificial intelligence. We know when we wake up in the morning. We know when we bask in the sun. We fall in love. We have our heart broken. We get bummed out and we get depressed. And we love great pizza. And we talk about our day and the meaning of our lives. And how about this one? DNA. We all have a lot of it. Have you ever seen your DNA? There is 3 feet of DNA smushed into each cell. If you took all of your DNA and stretched it out, it would go 10 billion miles, which is beyond Pluto. And from a genetic perspective, you are a long time in making. There is 3 billion years of stuff in our DNA. And you are a combination of traits of your family history that go back before history. And DNA is an instruction manual about how to keep us alive. And we are 99.9% the same. Amazing. And yet we're absolutely incredibly different too. Isn't that true? Just take a look at facial recognition technology. Everybody has a different face, even identical twins. And so when we begin to awaken to the fact that it is an utter gift, it is an utter miracle that any of us are alive, it is nutsville that we are alive. crazy. It's just craziness. And when we awaken to the giftedness of the sacred humanity of Jesus, that aliveness takes on a different kind of way of being. Now, Jesus was one of 117 billion people, which is the number of people that experts think have been alive. And he was just like us, right? He had a mother. He was born. He was a being with a body and with a brain and breath and human consciousness and DNA that added up to Jesus of Nazareth, who grew up in a small hill town with about 90 people. And as Archbishop Rowan Williams said, his humanity was undefended. He was born in poverty. There was no room at the inn, and he spent his whole life as a poor man. As he said, the Son of Man has nowhere to lay his head. And yet, he's not only one of 117 billion people, he is one out of 117 billion people. This is the fully divine part of Jesus, as we would say in the Incarnation, fully human and fully divine. The New Testament writers really struggle to try to describe the being of Jesus, and there are over 50 titles for Jesus in the New Testament. And as you know, St. John of John's Gospel says, "And the Word was made flesh and dwelt among us," dwelt being to be a tent or a tabernacle, like God's presence in the Hebrew Scriptures. And John describes Jesus in those great I am sayings, I am the way and the truth and the life, and that I am is the name of God. And Matthew says, Emmanuel, God with us. And Mark, in the first sentence, calls Jesus the Christ and the Son of God. And Luke uses so many descriptors, holy and Son of God and Savior and Christ and Lord. And in Hark the Herald Angels Sing, fantastic carol, we just sang in the second verse, veiled in flesh the Godhead see, hail the incarnate deity. Jesus had human consciousness just like we have, but he also had divine consciousness, which is sometimes known as Christ consciousness or cosmic consciousness. So in Jesus's mental marinade, he had the consciousness of God. In other words, born into this tiny human being in this tiny spot, Bethlehem, the city of David, was not really a city, but it was bigger than Nazareth. It was kind of a nowhere place in and of itself. And in that human being is the infinite loving energy that created and holds the world together. Now, many of you know that during my sabbatical, I studied what the Dalai Lama had to say about Christianity and about Jesus. I was very interested in what I could learn from somebody outside of our religion. And he notes that one of the things that is unique about Jesus amongst all human beings of all time is Jesus is the only one who did not go through the stages of spiritual development. Jesus was born with this divine communion. He didn't learn how to get it through spiritual disciplines. And the Dalai Lama also tells us what we know, but it is super great to hear the Dalai Lama tell us who we are and who Jesus is. And he says, what makes the Christian vision of divinity unique is the portrayal of God with a human face, namely in the person of Jesus. This understanding of God in human form brings the presence of God powerfully close to the human heart, creates a sense of intimacy with God in the hearts of Christian followers. The very heart of the incarnation, if you put yourself in Jesus' body and in Jesus' conscience, what you get is that he has the heart of God in his human heart. And that is the aspiration of every serious follower of Jesus, which is to have the divine heart in your heart. That's what the pursuit is. And then His Holiness goes on to say, Christianity offers an incredibly intimate and moving symbol of love in the image of Mary holding the baby Jesus. This links up with the deep meaning of motherhood as the ground of compassion, and it evokes the universal human need for love and affection. Anybody who has studied knows that for a human being to come to full fruition, they must experience love and they must give love. DNA may keep us alive and tell us how to run the body, but DNA doesn't tell us how to be alive. I mean, there's many ways to be alive, and some are mostly physical. We all know people that are mostly physical in their aliveness, and some people spend their lives consumed by petty things, like what people think of them, or what they think of people, or who their people are. And some people spend this one in a gajillion number life completely consumed by hatred. I mean, there is in the world today 13 major warring conflicts. And in Bethlehem, where Jesus was born, is completely, basically shuttered tonight in the celebration of Christmas as it's torn by the war in the Holy Land. And just take a look at our country. How many people in our country are utterly consumed by what they hate? They just are consumed. They are wasting their one life being consumed by hatred. And Jesus of Nazareth was consumed by divine love. That's what he was. He was consumed by a love of the divine and a love for everything else, every person, every created, the whole of the cosmos. The Word made flesh dwelt among us to love. Now, Jesus taught us how to be a human being. That's what he's teaching us. And his very being and the way he was and what he taught is the way of love that can transform our DNA life into something unimaginably greater than just being a human being. Being a human being is the most wild adventure possible. And if we're not careful, we'll lead kind of asleep lives. But it is unimaginably greater when you live your life drawing closer to Jesus of Nazareth and being in touch with the infinite loving energy that he conveys. And being a human being is unimaginably greater to love your neighbor as yourself. Now, would it not be an outrageous Christmas gift to each of us, to ourselves and to our family and our friends and our neighbors and those in our country, if we could all just work on being a little bit better at being a human being? Now, who amongst us doesn't believe we have an even greater capacity for love and compassion? And if you don't think you have it, just draw closer to the baby Jesus here tonight. We should all be dedicated to one another. We are 99.9% the same in our little gifts of love and compassion, even to those in our family. Now, they may not stretch to Pluto like our DNA, and they may not stretch around the world 2.5 times like our blood vessels, but there is no doubt that every little loving thing we do out of our human beingness to another human beingness reaches the heavens. For the second person of the Trinity, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, was himself at one point a human being, and no doubt, he has a great divine heart for human beings and for all of us and each of us, and you too. Merry Christmas, human beings.